let me just say this. We are about to get into the social segment. Remember, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend that the People's Kamkunji is about to be in full effect. Now, the person who has got the notes for the show is none other than Mr. Ali Badawy, who not only hogs the mics,
he has the notes,
but hogs the notes.
Kwani amechange jina yake ni hola note.
Okay.
Unasikia mchongo
Sasa ati hog the notes.
No, hola notes. Amesema hola notes.
Okay.
He didn't say you hog the notes. He said you hola notes. Hog the notes.
It's okay.
Even Peter?
Yeah, Peter.
Oh, okay, so.
Yeah, you know, me, my mind is clean.
It's clean.
It's only clean things that
like hola notes.
Yeah.
And hogging notes.
And maybe ni mafans ndo wanapenda kunisikiza. You know? Ni mafans ndo wananiita. Maybe. I'm just saying. Hey, you know? But anyway.
So your father
we are gonna be having a conversation about fathers who raise children that are not their biological offspring.
Can we do a disclaimer after you say that?
Yes, okay. After. So what would you do if you found out as a grown-up that the father who raised you is indeed not your biological father? Or even you, as the father, finds out that your grown-up child is indeed not your child. What would you do? It's an open-ended question. We want to start hearing responses.
So just to provide context, I was, I'm a big fan and a huge fan of D.L. Hughley. And he was being interviewed, and the caption on it said, I wish I did not find out. I'm paraphrasing over here. I wish I did not find out that my father was not my biological father. Something like that. And so he proceeded to describe what happened, So when he found out that, okay, this is not your father is not your father, because his name actually Hughley comes from his stepfather. That's where his name comes from. If he had retained or he had stayed with the biological father, I think the name would have been Brashad or something. Anyway, yeah, it would have been different. So Hughley is his stepdad, let us just say.
Okay.
So the story goes, and you guys can search it on DJ Vlad, that when he was born, DL, when he was born, the man that he knows who was there was the stepdad, not the biological.
Okay.
So, ameishi maisha yake knowing that this is his dad, whatever. So, something still not comfortable. So, anyway.
Now, this conversation about not knowing who exactly your dad is, or maybe unknowingly thinking that the person who raised you is your biological father. I think in a lot of our societies, and when I say our societies, I'm saying African. It was never necessarily an issue, because it was known sometimes that huyu ni mtoto wa fulani na nini. It was never an issue. But I think in the world today, it's very important. If you have a child, if you're raising up a child and you're not the biological father, or as a mother, or both of you know, it's one thing if the father does not know that this is the biological, this is my biological child. But it's another thing when the father doesn't know. In a case where both the father and the mother know, then I think the child should be told. But in a case where the father doesn't know, now that's a bit tricky. The mother needs to figure out how they will tell the child, because when the child finds out, it's gonna turn to be very ugly. It's gonna turn out to be very ugly. So
you know, and this is why the question we posed was, how would you take it? It's different when it comes to who are you going to blame, because it's so deep. Again, there's so many channels, there's so many things. So first and foremost, how would you take it? Because that's the first question. So Ali, all of a sudden you are 47. Sorry, I know you're like about 40, 49, but let me give you like 45.
Hey.
Then, you know, you find out, you know, Omosh, you know, because again, this shit does happen. And unfortunately, or fortunately, and I'm willing to be proved wrong, you know, some of the things that we don't talk about. However, sometimes it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. You could be, let me be open and truthful. Let me tell this kid, I'm not the father. But then again, you know, how much trauma are you going to inflict on a kid? How much trauma are you going to how much is this kid willing to receive trauma-wise? Knowing, let's say, for example, if he's known Ali is the dad, but when you step, emotion, you're biological.
So I think the trauma can be minimized if this child is told gradually while growing up, rather than hitting them, you know, like one day when they are 20-something years old. I think if they're gradually, you know, like if it's implied to them, if they're told, you have to be very creative in how you do this. But here's my thinking, you know, like, or here's maybe how I would react, and maybe the younger me might have reacted a different way. What I always say is that if this thing comes out, I'll want to give the people maybe who knew the benefit of the doubt. Why am I saying the benefit of the doubt? I would give them the benefit of the doubt because you personally don't know why this was hidden from you. There could be a reason.
Right.
Yeah, there could be a reason why it was hidden from you. And I have a couple of reasons in mind already.
Go ahead.
Why something like this could be hidden from you.
Yes.
The number one reason why this could be hidden from you, you could be a product of a sexual assault or rape.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You could be a product of sexual assault. Mm-hmm. So you see, in such a situation, and that's why sometimes certain things, it's best sometimes just to let it go and just move on with your life. If someone raised you and they did you right, like what you know, like Jeffrey Chui said earlier on in the show, you know, just accept him as your father. Even if later on you come to find out that he's not your biological father, but he raised you, he took care of you, and treated you, you know, just like a biological father would treat the child. You know, is just move on. Don't ask too many questions. Don't try to, because the more you dig, the more traumatized you'll become. Because I think there's always a reason. You know, for me, it's one thing when the father who is raising the child is actually thinking that this is my child. I think the father should know. But if it's a situation where even the father who's raising the child does not know that this is not my biological child, then that is a problem right there.
But sometimes the mother doesn't know who the father is.
And I think this is where we need our female listeners to chime in. Is there something like the mother doesn't know
Yes.
who the father is?
Yes.
How does that happen?
Clearly, Moripovich has proved that a lot. Severally.
What is Moripovich?
DNA.
Oh.
So it's a show. DNA tests. There are
Okay.
people who go on there now.
Alia uko na
Oh, you're talking about the Maury show.
The more show.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now I remember it. Yeah.
You know, they say
Yeah.
a mother knows
Ali.
the father.
Yeah.
I mean, a mother knows who the father is. But clearly,
They don't
they not
necessarily know.
all
Not all.
know.
Okay, but I need this explained to me, you know, like
I think in
I
the
need to
cases that
understand.
we've seen also like on Maury, it was like the person believed so much that it was person A because that's happened your pale alikuwa amekwama, and it turns out to be person B.
In a
And-
2-week period,
or within that time frame where they
amekuwa
could
na
have
Omosh,
nini sired,
Ali.
they could have had a child.
Pablo.
So let's say even if it was with two different people, let's say even on the same day.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
let's say even on the same day.
Yes.
Yeah. So in that case, I can understand when, you know, like they're 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah. When they're 50-50, you know, I'm not sure if this is the father or not. And in that case, I would also like to know the thinking process of who the mother will select. Because if she clearly doesn't know, she has to make a choice.
It's normally the person she has more feelings for. And sometimes, as those shows have shown, it turns out that it's not that person. And I don't know. I mean, like you said, women probably should chime in and tell us, is there like a gut feeling? You're like, hey, okay, when it happened, you're like, hey, yes, it's this chap. It's definitely not this guy. Even though in my mind I want it to be this guy, but it's really this guy.
Okay.
You know.
All right. There are those rare situations where, you know, like she was with two different people within a very short period of time.
Sure.
It could be.
But then,
Sorry.
there's some situations where, you know, like she more than likely knows who she was with, you know, like exactly 9 months ago.
Okay.
So that's where
you know the difficulty becomes this. The difficulty becomes this, and in today's age, we're talking about today. You know, back in the day, it's a different story. You know, back in the day, there wasn't that, you know, liberalism, and there wasn't that, before the women's conference, Beijing conference, or whatever that conference was. That's right, I said it. Before that, you know, it's you know the liberation of the woman, and not being withheld, not being grounded, for lack of a better word. But then now you come to a situation where you have, you know, you meet, you know, you're exploring, you're free, you know, you're not being held down. You know, culture is not holding you down, because culture sometimes used to ground you, but now there's no culture, so you're not being grounded, so you're feeling free, you know, for lack of a better word. Now, when you see, and the reason this, you know, this is being brought up is because you find that, you know, guys have been put in situations where, and I'm talking about guys, they, you know, serious lockdown looking, you know, wanatafuta bibi, you know, family, whatever, and, you know, something comes up, you know, something happens, you know, there's a road accident, or there needs to be a blood transfusion, and, you know,
damu haziingiani.
You're not a match.
You're not a match.
Yeah.
Lakini
know-
mtoi ni wa?
Mtoini wako.
Mtoni wako, lakini not a match. The most, for me, to this day, and this was, Maury was about like, I think about a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago.
More than that, I think. But
No, yeah, it's been more, but I'm saying for me, the most career, this couple came on the show, and the woman,
the lady.
you
The
know,
Chile.
confesses, you know, says, you know what, I don't think such and such is your son. This is after 10 years. This guy has known that this kid is his for
Correct.
10 years plus.
Correct.
The kid is a special needs kid. Kid is wheelchair bound. And the DNA results come out. These guys have been married for more than 10 years. And the DNA results come out, he is not the father.
and in a case, it's not the child's fault.
No. This is forget the child.
I get what you're
No,
saying,
no.
man.
The child is not.
Yeah, but man. So in a situation like
So
that,
now, and that
Hiya.
is what we're talking about.
Hiya.
Because
Aish.
no, forget it. No, the child.
Bwana.
Don't. No, the child should never, ever, ever, ever be blamed.
And here Stephen
Ever.
Butt is bringing up a good point. Ama, when you get a green card and you have to do a DNA test,
For
people
who?
have discovered their kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
When
green
you get-
cards
in Kenya, 254.
in Kenya, yeah, you have to take a DNA test.
Eh?
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Oh yes, yeah. Before,
254.
because if you win a green card and you
Yes.
want to file for your child, they have to do a DNA test. They have to do a DNA test. That's a procedure.
So for your family.
yes,
Yes, your wife and your kids.
that's a procedure.
Now, what if you've married the mama, but the toy she came with the toy?
That you'd have put that. I mean, you can prove that because I married her with children before that. Then you're okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But it is the fact.
okay. So in the case now, when you have not confessed, or you don't, then where you're going with the mwenendo huu ni mtoi wako.
Yes.
And then at that test, it comes out mtoisi wako.
that-
Yes.
at that juncture.
Because you have to do. Because they started doing that recently.
That's reason.
How long ago is it?
No, that's reason because before,
Wow.
people just used to be
Yeah,
given kids.
una-
Chukua
you-
mtoto.
yes,
Uni
yes,
mtoto wako, yeah.
yes.
So now, okay, a situation like that, Omosh, umeshinda, umelea, everything. Hey, then what happens?
You've already thrown a bash, like everybody in your village has come kukuaga.
And you sold things for the house.
You've
Yes.
sold everything. You're coming to the US.
Because you've won, but
See, maybe you rent a SQ for them to settle
Well,
as you come.
but what would you do? What would you do at this
I
point?
mean, to be honest, I think most men, fathers, are not going to abandon the child.
If you've already raised the child.
Because you're already raising, not if you're already, you're
and that
already
is
raising.
a big assumption, bro.
No, I said most. Listen to what I'm saying. Hold on.
I
hold
would
on.
say a percentage.
No. Hold, just
Don't
listen.
say most.
No, I said
Say a
I said
percentage.
most, and that's why I said fathers.
Percentage.
I said fathers.
Most is
I-
over 50%
I said-
plus one.
I said fathers, and I didn't say a man who has married a woman, as in her husband. A husband and a father, two different things. Because if you have the bond with this child, no matter what, let's dial this back down, kidogo. Hold that thought. Kuna divorce. You don't divorce your kids. Correct?
No, you don't.
You still stay in their lives.
Yeah.
So in this particular case,
Depending.
oh,
No, you divorce. You don't divorce your kids. Like
No, you
you
can't
raise your
divorce. You
kids.
can't divorce your
Yeah,
kids.
you can't
Kids are your
divorce
kids.
your kids,
in
But
divorce,
in divorce, in the American law, lingua, it becomes a problem and carry on.
okay, but what I'm saying here is that the bond you have with the child, no piece of paper or test should be able to break.
Yeah, that's true.
As a father, whether you biologically father,
As a man who has raised that child.
correct, it should not be breakable. Now, if indeed it is breakable by this, then clearly this was not your portion, or it was not you. It was not.
That is being harsh, though. Because
I'm not. No. I'm just saying again, your bond to this child
Yes.
was not based upon somebody giving you a piece of paper and saying,
should not have been.
Hold
Say
on.
that.
No.
Oh, sorry, let me finish.
No,
Let me till you
the
finish.
piece of
No,
paper.
I get Omosh's
The
point.
piece of
Let me-
paper.
let me finish.
The piece
Let
of
me
paper
finish.
that says, Ati, Omosh, you are the father. Here, uni mtoi wako, born of you and so and so. That piece of paper says that, right? And it comes with all the legal ramifications, blah blah blah, and all that. You can claim the child on insurance, unameka kwa insurance yako, and so on and so forth. This is your heir, right? 10 years later, you find out your heir is not your heir as you thought,
Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
Now, do you then say, okay, Sasa, the bond that I've had with this child, I'm going to break it because now that piece of paper is worthless and my bond of 10 years, the work I've put in for 10 years, is done. I'm walking away
No,
from the child.
No, even
I'm not talking about the woman. I said from the child. You may decide that it is unforgivable and you walk away from the woman, but you may still, but your bond with this child had nothing to do with the woman. It was parent to parent, parent to child. Sorry. As in, you are the one who made that bond. There's no one who makes a parent bond with a child. It's either you ni wewe na mtoto. Hakuna ule mtu anasema ati yo sijui nini nini. Hakuna. There's nothing like that. So to me, I think it should not even be an issue. Which is why back in the day, when these tests didn't exist, nini nini nini. In fact, there were situations where mamas couldn't have kids. And she goes and she's siagat by somebody else. And she gets preggers, comes back, and this toy is raised by this chap. This chap doesn't know. The guy who's the father doesn't know that he's raising. He's been given a kid and told, this is your toy.
A neighbor's child.
But it's his neighbor. And it could be that this jama even hata hizo vitu yale kwa anatoa azitokagi every time. Hold on, every time this mama wants a toy, she goes back. That jama siagas, pap toys come out.
I will disagree, but
back in the day, as long as the mtoi was under your umbrella, under your roof, uni mtoto wako. Hata wale wa ndugu wako ambaye ameaga. You take the wife in, you take the toy in, and even you go, you siaga, and you get another toy with her.
That's different, but carry on.
No, but I'm saying, back in the day, now we have technology that is pushing this thing that says, okay, now the technology here is saying, uyu si wako, which means now you need to sever your parental bond as your ties, because on paper, biologically, this thing is saying the ones and the zeros, the X's and the O's, they're not matching as Indiani because of this particular test. If that test didn't exist and this mama didn't tell you nothing, ungeendelea tu na maisha. Na maisha ingekuwa poa. But like you're saying, until those situations come up when now there's a blood transfusion needed, nini, then now is when you're like, okay, sasa, mom, clearly, apa I'm not anini, this toy, we need to save the toy. Who is the chap? Let's see if we can get, or family yake ni kina nani, tuende huko, because maybe kuna kamatch kwa hiyo familia, ka umsea huko. Because it's bigger than you. And that's why I'm saying that bond, that parental bond, ikisha donjo, ime donjo. It doesn't matter what happens on this backside, because adults kosana every day. But you and your toy ni wewe na mtoto wako. It's something you cannot, and you're a parent. So that's all I'm saying.
Ali, go ahead.
I'm in full agreement with Omosh. You know, like human relations, let's say, like, even you discover, you know, forget about, you know, like even parenting. You discover your brother is not your biological brother. You know, you just somehow discover that, you know, one or another.
Kwa kitanda.
Yeah.
Sasa utamwambia ai, boss.
No, you're not gonna just flip. You know, like I find it hard to find a human who'll just flip after you've had a relation over a lifetime, you know, and just flip now. I'm no longer gonna treat him as a brother, you know, because of this. So that's why I'm saying, that's why I'm in agreement with Omosh. If you've raised a child, you know, to maybe even 18 years, or it's one thing if the child is still young, you know, like 3-4 years. But if you've raised a child, you know, amekuwa mpaka karibu mtu mzima, like you guys have a relationship, I find it hard, you know, for someone to decide, because the mother, you know, like lied to me, I'm gonna cut ties with this child because huyu hapa si mtoto wangu. But now I have something that I want to introduce that may sound very controversial.
Before you introduce that, this one I have to comment.
Yeah.
There is an aspect that, and let me use the cultural tangent briefly. There's a certain way and certain things. There's a certain way things were done back then. If, let's say, for example, you know, you marry somebody and they could not get kids.
Yeah.
A woman could not get kids. You know, the woman will look for somebody, a woman, bring her in for the sole purpose of procreating.
Correct.
And those kids would be her kids, not this guy's kids. However, depending on the agreement, culturally, kids, her lineage would be named, and surrogate would be named. It was known. If a guy could not manage my challenges, culturally depending, like you're there, me I need your sperm, what's up? I mean, whatever. Manage will alternate. There was a process. There was an understood way of doing things
Correct.
back then. And it was established, it was law, it was order.
And accepted.
And accepted.
Yes.
That is it. Can't compare that to now. Totally different. For example, I'll give an example, like in the Kikuyu tradition. You know, if you go and get a woman, a single mother, she has a child, there would be a ritual performed that would disconnect the child from the father's lineage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Once that is done, this kid is now part of this clan, tribe, whatever. And that was culturally, it was practiced over and over again. The difference here comes when, you know, culture is not here. You know, this is not a culture or whatever. You know, you've met somebody, you've come here to Baltimore, whatever, Russia, wherever. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Let's say London. You know, meet somebody, you hook up, whatever. And for the longest time, for this time, however long, you know, this is your because there has been a lot of not maturation, but there's a lot of evolution, because culture sort of ceased to be important, and now everybody started following what is the norm, or what is fresh, what's going on, Western world or whatever. And that is where now there's a problem, because if culturally it was acceptable and it was accepted, that is one thing. But now here, guys are thinking it's my way or the highway. Guys have already rubbished and pushed away culture. So now, in as much as I want to be, by removing the essence of culture, you are not educated in accepting a child who is not yours. In case, like that, for example, you marry a woman with a child. Because most people, at one point in time, maybe us, when we were younger, would never marry a woman with a child.
With a child, yeah.
And that is fact.
Yeah.
We would never.
Yeah.
However, there are more single mothers now than there were then.
Yeah.
Sure.
And when I say then, we're talking about even, let's say, when in the 90s. There are way more single mothers now.
No, that's a fact, yeah.
It's fact.
Yeah.
Right? So now, with that being the case, that means that when you're going to meet a woman, chances are very likely
That she has a child.
she's a single mother.
Yeah.
Or two.
Let's just say she's a single mother, boss. You meet her, she's a single mother.
Yeah.
Now, there needs to be a reprogramming for the man. It has to happen, where you have to be willing to accept that you, at some point, Kikuyu say ng'ombe na kamukada kayo. You accept the ng'ombe with its rope. The rope is symbolic of the kid,
The
kid
toy.
or kids.
Or or whatever the rope comes
Whatever,
with. Whatever the rope comes with.
whatever,
Plus
the
the
rope,
relas.
whatever.
Plus the relas yote.
Yoyote.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to accept that. Culturally, back then, before it got to that, norms had already been set in place. There was a
process.
There was a process,
Yeah.
and things worked. But now we are being forced to redefine how we engage. You meet a mother of two, a single mother of two. Now, sasa tuseme, for example, so Ali, you meet so and so, single mother of 2. Maze, two. You only need to be 2 or 1.
Let's make it 2.
2
Yeah, or even 3.
or 3.
Yeah, I
No,
love
even
kids.
you too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you know, so unaenda kuongea na madhako, your family, this. And this is not a spotlight on you. We know of situations, well, I know situations, but we know of situations where families are not really, really welcoming. Now, not back then, now.
Yeah.
If you find a woman, if you find a single mother of 2 or 3,
Yeah.
and you want to wife her,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the question becomes, you wanna tell us you can't find a
Yeah, one without.
Yeah.
one without?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That always comes
Or with
up.
less.
Yeah. That always comes up.
I'm
And-
not hogging the mic. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Carry on.
Yeah, no, you are hogging the mic, but it's okay. But that always comes up, and sometimes it would come, you know, like sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes it would come from a place of love, whereby maybe your family knows you and they feel like, okay, you know, we know him, he's been single, and then overnight you're moving from single to a wife,
Family of 4.
with 2 kids.
Maybe
you
it's
know.
injury time. Maybe you're like
Yeah.
47. They're like, yo,
Ah,
whatever,
those-
whatever,
No,
whatever you can get.
whatever age that you are, that emotional aspect of moving from, you know, like just being single by yourself, and then now you have a wife that you have to deal with, and then you also have relationships that you have to cultivate with these children that maybe you just met or you've not known for a very long time. That's very heavy, you know, like emotionally on, especially men. Women are a bit more receptive to children who are not their own, because women are naturally natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Women are more receptive.
100% agree.
For men, it's not a natural process
it's not.
to just start, you know, like accepting, you know, like the child or children of someone else. So I think the reason why families come in sometimes is because of that concern, you know, like they're concerned for you, you know, of course, you know, like emotionally, psychologically, and also financially. You know, they may know your financial situation, so they may be concerned when you move from being single to a family of 4. That's a whole different financial ball game altogether. So I think sometimes, you know, like families sometimes have a legit reason to be concerned, because they're looking at this and they're like, you know, like kama situation haiko poa hapa, we are the ones who'll have to step in, you know, like to take care of this family and to take care of these kids. Now, there was a controversial part that I wanted to introduce to avoid
You're saying that.
a woman, you know, and then you're suspecting, and then at
Ali.
birth unaanza kumwambia tufanye DNA.
Ali.
That's a very emotional time to start asking someone for DNA.
Ali, you know, that's like ile hii kitu ya inaitwaje? What's that the prenup?
Yes.
Nika prenup.
Yeah. And I think everyone should have a prenup too. That's just me.
Nika prenup. Hiyo kitu inaweza vunja nyumba kabla nyumba ijengwe.
But now, if it's the law, wewe unakuja unasema, oh, me by the way, me I don't care about DNA.
Oh, wait. So,
but when it's a law, you know, like the way vaccines are required.
Which law in this America?
Like the way vaccines are
you're
required.
saying the law in
To
this
me,
America,
wherever.
it won't be in America.
Yeah, to me, wherever. Because also in America, how some dads get trapped into paying child support for kids who don't belong to them. You know, like if you show up in a hospital, now this is advice to, you know, like men out there who have some suspicion that the child might not be theirs. You know, like, and don't quote me. Iishi hapa hapa. The day when mtoto anazaliwa, you better jipa shughuli. Because you show up to the hospital, you know, you will be hassled by the social workers and whatever's to sign. And in certain states, I believe in Maryland is one of them. If you sign, it doesn't matter what a DNA test will say a year later or 5 years later. You're bound to pay that child support until that child turns, is it 18 or 21 or whatever age child support
I
goes
think
to.
it's 18.
You're bound.
Or if they're still in school, then it
Yes.
Yeah, so if you have that suspicion, you know, because, you know, like, and during that time, it's a very emotional time, you know, like where huwezi kwanza kuingia usianza kusema siko sure siwezi kusaini kitu na nini. So that's just, you know, like a life hack I was taught by one of my African American friends. You know, like I actually never knew about this, because we have situations where, you know, like fathers are now knowingly paying child support for kids who actually don't belong to them because they're bound by law.
Once you sign that birth certificate, hook, line, and sinker.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Like Toro teach.
It's a wrap.
Yeah.
Like Toro. It is a wrap. And I remember you saying, who do you blame? Currently, you know, back in the day, culturally there was a procedure. I'll speak from the Kikuyu perspective in terms of culture. That there was a way of doing things. There was, you know, I don't know about other tribes and what they did, but there was a way. If you are, you know, if you could, you know, many stories abound. You know, there's some people who could not get kids. You know, and actually even speaking to our super producer Bandio, you know, there's some people in Tanzania. There's a certain tribe of, you know, women would, if a woman knew that she could not give birth, she was barren, she would get a woman who can procreate, marry her, she become a surrogate. So surrogacy did not even start. It's not a foreign concept.
Yeah, we had it.
It was practiced back then. It was practiced back then. You know, it's only that now there's a lot of Western influence.
Science.
Western influence has shaped our minds and thoughts on how to deal with stuff. You know, if, let's say, for example, you know, at some point in time, you know, if Ali is my brother, his kids are my kids.
Correct.
Yeah.
As it should be.
Simple.
As it should be. There's no other way, and if or but.
You know, my kids are his kids. You know, my kids are your kids, your kids are my kids. You know,
and
like,
na ukimwona nakosa,
unachapa mtu unatandika.
You correct them. That's what you're supposed to do.
But nowadays, there's that.
But it's different, yeah.
And, you know, there's the cultural, the appropriation of, leave my kid alone or whatever. And this has seeped into the Kenyan community. Now, for varying degrees and varying reasons or whatever, we can't discuss now because, you know, because of time. But there's a way, nikiona mtoto wa Ali, like, where?
Yeah, there's a way,
and
they know.
Now, like,
they know. Even the kids know. Because you're like, nah.
You know?
Straight up, you can't do that.
But
you cannot do that. In fact, if there's a problem here, I'll even frog match you to your parent.
But there's
a shape up.
There's a question
Most
that Ali
times.
asked. I don't know if we have fulfilled it properly. Who is to blame?
Now,
for the discovery or for the
discovery. So like now Ali discovers that, you know, his dad, who happens to be now his stepdad,
correct,
is not his biological, you know.
Pablo, somebody
Greece,
would say that the blame is supposedly on the mother. Somebody would say that she should know. But again, what if she didn't know? Right? Now, if indeed she did know, and this was kept a secret, as in it was a mutual thing, where the father who took on the child knew, the mother knew, but they decided it was best, or they decided that they made a decision.
It was a mutual agreement.
It was a mutual agreement that said it's best for this Toi never ever to know.
Yes,
because
and that happens.
Because maybe you Jama, I don't know, you call Gerezani, it could be anything.
Yes,
that's happened, right? So the assumption here again is that it's known. So if you want to pass blame, then you have to go back and say, well, is there anyone who you can even actually say has ownership of it? Because on the back end, they may not know. And that's where all that, the DNA, blah, blah, blah. So that's why Ali's saying to eliminate all of this, DNA we're part of. So as Cecil unatoka hospitali unasema ni huyu kabla mtu apige sahihi anapigwa chwa, because the law says the guy who's signing the thing needs to, for sure, because he's going to be wanted to be legally responsible, ni mpaka afanye nini? Afanye hii DNA.
Now,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now, I think, like in a situation where the adults, like sat down and spoke, this is the situation, that's okay. But in a situation where there was a secret amongst adults, I think the blame, like squarely goes onto the mother. And I know this is controversial, but the reason why I say this blame squarely goes into the mother, even in a situation where you don't know. So maybe you don't know the father. Maybe you don't know the father, but you know that there's A, B, or C
Correct.
who could be the father.
Potentially, yes.
So in that situation, I think it's only fair.
For you to find out which one of
No,
the
no,
A,
no,
B, and
not,
the
not
C.
for you to find out, but for you to say something, especially to the person you assign, because I can't pretend to know the thought process which, like a mother goes through when determining who I'm gonna, who I'm
Select.
gonna bestow the responsibility of being a father. I don't know what process, and I think for different women it might be different.
Maybe
things.
it will be the guy she's married to at that time. It could
Oh,
have,
yes.
there could be the could be
Yes.
the guy of Posta
Yeah.
that she was twangering and the guy of UPS.
Yes. So maybe it's a guy, and there's some situations where it was a one night stand and maybe the mother doesn't even know who that other guy is.
Agreed.
So she's gonna default to the guy that she knows. But I think the one thing that a mother will always know if there's uncertainty. Like she may not know that A, B, or C is the father, but at the bare minimum, she's gonna know there's uncertainty. There are like 2 or maybe even 3 people that could potentially be the father. So I think at the bare minimum, what she needs to do very early is say something, so that if a DNA test is needed, if whatever is done, so that at least that thing is sorted while the child is still an infant. Now, once that solution has been reached, there has to be a decision on whether to tell the child at some point in their life, and that decision has to be mutual. So if a decision is reached, for example, like what Omosh is saying, a decision is reached to never tell the child, and then the child, for one reason or another, finds out, then in this case, the blame goes equally to both parents, or everybody who was in that deal of never telling that
Covering
child.
up.
Yeah, who was in that deal of covering up. There's some justifications for covering up.
No, and
Sexual assault.
Correct.
There's some justifications for
Yes.
covering up.
Yes.
And then there's some cases where maybe she was a minor when this happened. And maybe also the father was a minor. There might be reasons out there to justify never wanting to tell the child. But the scenarios I mentioned, if there was a secret that was kept amongst adults, the blame squarely goes on the mother. If there was no secret and an agreement was reached by the adults to never tell the child, then those adults who were involved are all equally culpable.
I'd say, you wanna comment?
I think we need to read the comments.
Okay, proceed. But before you read the comments, okay,
yes.
no, go ahead. You read the comments, then I'll chime in with my whatever.
I think
my
I'll
thought process.
start from. Ooh-wee. Okay, where do I start from? These comments, they're good ones though. So I'll start with Washeka Nirangu says, I don't think women are more receptive of their partner's kids. I think they're just good at pretending to accept them to please the men. That is some scary-ish.
That's really scary.
I can see.
Repeat that again.
Okay.
I'm looking at the comment.
I don't think women are more receptive of their partner's kids. I think they're just good at pretending to accept them to please the man.
Wow.
Shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
But-
So
but-
a woman
but-
would love a man that
but-
much that
yes.
they don't like
Oh,
kids.
yes.
But you know what?
Ali, yes.
I will speak from experience.
About
My-
being receptive to be pretended to. Oh,
No.
sorry.
My own. There's a time I asked my uncle, like, yo, why didn't mom, remarry? What happened? It's like, boss, mwanamke wa bwana, sometimes your your father-in-law, can be heinous. But sometimes worse is even your stepmother. If you guys, mungeenda huko, the one who would have come in probably. And that was an example he was giving. I was like, and these are guys who, this is not even us, the generation that is confused.
It's the one before. Yeah.
Okay. Aya, endelea na comments.
Hey? So then Slay says, Washekandrango, hey? It's so good to see you. And she's like, then Washeka is like, that's why we have more cases of stepmothers mistreating kids than stepfathers.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, you know, so that not accepting thing. And then Stephen Batty says, the way Ali Badawy alisema jipe shughuli and don't show up at the hospital. What?
That's just a hack I learned, you know, because you know this child support thing is very serious, you know, like, and especially if you're paying child support for a child who's not yours. If you have any suspicions,
now
on that day,
speaking
jipe shughuli.
Speaking of that,
Travel for work.
Before you finish, before you read the next comment,
Yeah.
this is to you. Well, this is not to you, but in Maryland, DNA is the king. Doesn't matter if you sign the birth certificate or not. Speaking out of personal experience, but MD is one of the states that are referred to as mommy states. Takes care of women and kids to the disadvantage of the man.
So
C's and child support / welfare.
So let me ask a question, you know, and this is where maybe we need to go back to the law, and maybe Pablo can help us. If you sign that birth certificate, and I know this is different in different states, so it doesn't matter what the DNA says after 5 years.
Once you signed,
yeah, that's it. You're bound.
Sign,
yeah,
you're bound until 18.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about.
Once you sign,
yeah,
you're bound.
It doesn't matter if it's discovered that you know, like someone else is the dad.
Bro, sign.
Okay, all right.
You know, like how sometimes you're walking in the airport, you've got luggage, somebody zipped up whatever, put something, and then you didn't pay attention, then you walked in. Luggage ni ya nani?
Ni yako.
Who checked in?
Ni wewe.
Ukifika the other side, hata ukilia wewe ni nini, si umeshikwa nayo?
Yeah.
Wewe kesi yako inaenda wapi?
Ni yako. All right. Sawa. Aya. Omosh.
So some of the other comments were about, you know, being married and that it should not be even an issue, or, you know, but I'll skip those ones. So I'll go to Stephen Batu, says, there was a lady in Dallas who slept with 2 guys, within hours, and had 2 eggs fertilized, and they were each for the 2 men she did. It was like a crazy probability of happening, but it did. Luckily, she knew the 2 fellas she slept with. So I guess this goes to the point of what Ali was saying, that, you know, between A and B and C or whatever, at least you know A and B. But, yeah. And so then Slay says, what Uno said, have you seen the cases of some women and their boyfriends mistreating kids?
Yes. The boyfriend, yes.
Yeah, and then Grizzly says, what are the odds for this to happen? Saitan, that's talking about the Dallas thing.
But here
I'll say this.
Here's another thing, you know, like that I also want to quickly introduce. I know time is running out. Culturally, like within, like for example, our Muslim community, whoever raised you is your father. You know, like it doesn't matter. Whoever raised you is your father. You'll call him dad. But now here's the other thing. When it comes to inheritance, and this is an interesting part, and I think I might have brought it up here before. When it comes to inheritance, it's only a biological child who can go on the inheritance table to claim their stake. But here's the thing, you know, like this is something that had personally disturbed me for a very long time. Being a logical thinker, my thinking was, it's not, you know, like the child's fault. Why are they being disinherited just because they're not the biological children? And it was explained to me by a certain sheikh very well, you know, like the reason why, first of all, it's only the biological children who are recognized, you know, like at the inheritance table. It was because he said that, and of course, you know, DNA is a very recent technology. He was like, if you just allow any child to claim that they were a child, or to claim that you are a parent. You know, mama muuza mboga atakuja atasema pia mimi na mtoto wake. Mama muuza samaki pia atakuja atasema mimi na mtoto wake. So that is gonna create a problem.
Like how the shit happens in Kenya when a rich person
when
dies.
rich people die. Yeah. So that will create the problem for the legit biological children. However, there's provision, you know, like for someone while they're still alive, and if they know they have, you know, like no, sorry, it's not biological by mistake. It's children who are born out of wedlock.
You have mentioned that
Yes,
before.
it's children who are born out
You
of
have
wedlock.
mentioned that
Yeah.
before. Yes.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they are biological.
Yes.
But it's kids who are born out of wedlock.
yes.
Yeah. So how you take care of these kids? I was in a bit of confusion. Kids who are born out of wedlock are cannot inherit. You know. So how you need to take care of them? We allowed. You know, there's
A certain percentage.
there's a certain
Yes.
percentage that
Yes.
goes to everyone.
You mentioned that.
To the boy
Yes.
child, to the girl child, to the
Yes.
parents if they are alive.
You mentioned that.
It's a very elaborate
remember that, yeah.
process. But now you're allowed to will only up to a third of your wealth.
You mentioned that. Yes.
So in that a third, you can give it to anyone. You can give
Yes.
it to charity.
Yeah.
You can give it to your neighbor. There's no restriction of who you can give it to. So that's where you have to give your biological children. That's where you have to write it down that I want X to go to them. Or you could also give them while you're still alive.
Yeah.
You know, like take this.
Yeah, you
and this
mentioned
is
that.
yours. Yeah.
Now I'll say this. You know, I'm still. I am learning the Kikuyu culture,
Yeah.
and until recently, you know, women would not inherit land
Yeah.
from their family. But ideally, because the supposition was a woman is going to be married away.
Correct.
There's no point of giving her father's land because she's getting married
Because
away.
it will go away.
It's going away.
Yeah, because
And especially when it comes to ancestral land
correct.
belonging to the ancestors, you know, like your father's father,
It's been
father,
passed
father.
down.
No. It's not going to happen. I don't think in any culture anyone would be willing to bet on that. However, there are processes, you know, like if, let's say, for example, you're a widower or, you know, you're a single mother, there are processes into which where you can be brought back, you can come, you can be considered, in quotes, a boy of the homestead, provided you're not going to get married ever.
Hey.
Yes. Because remember,
Interesting.
because when you get married, what happens?
You go to another bomber.
Exactly. So you cannot huwezi kapatiwa ardhi.
Na utatoka na hiyo ardhi.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole, yeah.
Because
the whole,
now
that,
you're
yeah, the
taking
whole
that
point is
ardhi
yes.
uko.
Yeah, because then now
That
and
means
you
if
can-
your
you can
grandfather,
sell-
great
you can
grandfather,
sell- you can sell that thing.
whatever. So
Yeah.
the people who are going to inherit that land
Would be those chaps over
will be
there.
those people over there.
Yeah.
But I
So it
think
goes out of
I
the
think
family.
another thing that also
So-
messed up, you know, like especially within the Kikuyu culture, because it was interrupted by colonialism, is that land used to be communal. So this was easier, you know. Like I don't know whether did people used to have like akanika ploti kangu. I think land used to be communal.
No. There was no ploti. Ploti came after.
Yeah, this was a new concept.
This was a new
Yeah, when
concept.
title deeds
when
and markings and all that
all
were
that
brought
came
in.
after.
Yeah.
But you see, like now, for example, if Ali lived in a certain place
Okay, in a
and you own
certain
certain whatever,
yeah, in a certain
That was yours.
kahat,
Yeah, you go you
okay.
fence your area.
That was your.
You go
it
you
was
fence
known.
you go
It
you
was
fence your
known.
area. Once you
Okay.
fenced your area, umeclaim hapo ni
Forget
kwako.
even fencing.
Oh no, but they have
Fencing
they have you unafunga boma yako yani. You
I
have
mean,
a
there's
way.
boma,
Yes.
but you know that
You know that's your area.
You know
Yeah,
that's your area.
yeah, that's that. Then this is also area where the shamba, where yakashamba is where you grow
Because
your
there's the
maize or
homestead.
whatever.
You
Yes.
know, the Kikuyu you say, you know, if I get it right, Moshiene Nyoba. No, yeah, Moshiene Nyoba. Moshi is where they smoke. Where they smoke, that's the woman's hut, which means that there's food, which means that's the home. Anyway, it's a long story. But it was and after Beberwa came in, akavuruganisha kila kitu.
Yeah. There was a system. There was an elaborate
There was a system.
Yeah.
And once you get to understand this system, it makes you reflect how, you know, if you're a single mother, you would get, if you get a potential suitor, there was a ritual to everything.
Yeah.
It wasn't a problem. And sometimes I'm thinking, you know what? I think maybe we need to resort back. We need to find out what the rituals were.
The rules.
The rules.
And they worked so well.
Oh, they worked.
Yeah.
Because Kikuyus, you know, and I've, you know, this, I used to hear my uncle, you know, Babakaro, Mr. Francis, Mr. Gofu Maina, say, ngobe nakamuka dakayo. So, you know, when, you know, we're sitting down with him, we're vibing, we're talking. If you find a woman, you talk to akona mtoto, there's going to be a ritual. And you say, this is who I want. It's going to be a ritual. Now that kid now becomes part of the clan.
Yeah.
No questions asked. Nothing.
Yeah. And life goes on.
Oh, and life goes on. And I think maybe it's a wild. Maybe culturally we need to explore what our rituals were, what our modus operandi were with our ancestors. You know, your grandfathers, our grandfathers, and great-grandfathers, when it comes to such that, you know, the Western world has fashioned us child support, DNA, this and that, such that we become hostile to one another. And the kid ends up being the loser. And by the time the kid is growing up, the kid becomes so resentful and hateful. And this kid now is going to, in turn, get married or partner up with somebody else's child.
Yes.
To want to form a family. And because of what the kid has experienced, uko nyuma, boy or girl, it doesn't matter, that translates, which means this will be transferred to your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and moving on, and becomes toxic. And this, of course, has come from the West. Because in Africa, everyone, watoi, everyone, community.
Yes. Now, this adversarial system, which is, of course, you know, like a European and American system, is what has been introduced and has completely clashed, you know, like with our cultures. It's such that, you know, like if we can't get along for one reason or another, we have now to start knocking each other in a way that it's also going to start affecting the children. And it's clearly not working. It's not working in the West either. You
No.
see, that's the other thing that people need to understand.
By the way, in the West, they get 1 or 2 kids. Us guys, we used to chomoa 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 children.
But you see, there's it's not working in the West because, you know, like there's a very high divorce rate.
and that's exactly what they introduced to us.
Yes, and now that's also
suckers.
happening. That's what's also happening
That's
within
what's
our
in
society.
Africa, yes.
So I think that's why
Because we adopted that culture now.
that's
we are-
why I think, unfortunately, we have reduced our cultures to weddings and funerals. In weddings and funerals, those are the only 2 events where you'll see someone saying, like, apana, ni lazima ifanywe hivi, it's culture. In only those 2 events. And imagine, these are 2 events that happen twice in your life. There are those day-to-day affairs which are more important, like how you relate to your kids, like how you deal with,
The birth
you know,
of a-
like conflict.
The birth of a child.
Yes. So the birth of a child, Nini.
Let's come together.
Yeah.
You know, when, if you, let's say, for example, you have a son, you know. Going
But
through-
we've reduced to marriage and death, which is very unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
We need to figure out a way of, you know, like slowly, because it's not gonna be easy, of slowly, you know, like reintroducing this and maybe build a new generation of children who grow up, you know, like understanding this and knowing this, and they're gonna be very beneficial, not only to them, but to the society at large.
And that's why I was saying, I think at some point, I think we probably need to look back culturally. It doesn't matter whether you're Luo, Luya, Kamba, Kikuyu, because those are the things that politicians are using to divide us. Yet those are the things that can actually galvanize us together, bring us together. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, wahenga walena kilicho na mwanzo hakina budi kuwa na mwisho, meli imetia nanga. We are about to wrap this puppy up, and by wrapping it up, you know what? Kaende. OmoshFaya.
I don't know if we should read some of these comments before we. So,
because I was looking at the time, I actually even forgot. Sorry.
So let's see. So Washeka Tirango says, I think the scarcity of resources in a family is what leads to many issues of mistreatment. And Grizzly Proxy says, Ali, it's the culture, bruh, which made sense and prohibited immortality. Mbaya sana.
Immorality.
Is that what it meant? Immortality?
I think he meant immorality.
Immorality, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yes, immoral, yes. And then Dennis says, it was working really good until they came to Nini on us, Kwanzaa. And then Stephen Batty says, Ali Badawy, it was with all cultures. The Mijikenda and Taita had communal land, but the colonialists changed that and assigned plots. And Slay says, facts. Then Washeka Dragon says, a child support. Yeah. We all know what that was about. Chris says, Ali, Apo umedinya point smart. And then Pablo says, Grizzly Proxy, we are discussing kids' issues here. Watch your language. So then Slays like, Pablo, which kids are out here reading comments? Maybe somebody gave the kids an iPad, I don't know. But with that said, guys, thank you very much. As usual, we try to chambua these topics. And, sometimes people may want us to come to a conclusion. The conclusion you get is the conclusion you come out of.
Be blessed. Machachari Budabos. Togende.